Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alan Trin. I am the Viet Book Fest Program Manager, and I welcome you to the 5th edition of Viet Book Fest presented by the Vietnamese American Arts and Letters Association, or VAALA. For over 30 years, VAALA has built community through arts, connecting people through books, films, and storytelling. Founded in 1991 by Vietnamese American artists and friends, VAALA continues to uplift Vietnamese culture, creativity through events like the Book Fest today, the Film Fest, and youth programming workshops such as Youth in Motion and the Viet Film Fest Internship Program for the Vietnamese diaspora community here in Southern California and around the world. If you believe in the power of art, culture, and community, we invite you to stop by the VAALA Info Table and consider making a donation. So your support keeps events like the Book Fest accessible to all while nurturing the next generation of storytellers and artists. Together, let's continue to make art create community. Again, thank you to our sponsors, Ruth and Dr. VyVy Nguyen, Thai Lit Fan, Council Member of Santa Ana, Little Saigon TV, Red Bull Fish Sauce, UCI Vietnamese American Alumni Chapter, Voodoo Math at YouTube, Viet Bookstore, The Fan Has CV Family, Audiobook Liberal FM, Chris Tran Burton for our refreshments today. Our Vietnamese sponsor, Bowers Museum, congratulations on your 90th anniversary. Special thanks to OCTA for its partnership and A4Arts Fund for making Viet Book Fest 2026 possible. This panel is co-presented by Viet Film Fest. Starting in 2003, VAALA proudly presents Viet Film Fest, the largest international Vietnamese film festival outside Vietnam, attracting over 5,000 attendees annually from across the globe through in-person screenings and virtual platforms. We feature movies made by or feature Vietnamese people of descent from all around the world, hiding stories from our diaspora. On behalf of the Viet Film Fest executive team, we invite you to and your communities to submit your film via Film Freeway by April 15th for early submission, and by May 5th for regular submission deadlines. This year, Viet Film Fest will be in person at the Frida Cinema on the 9th, 10th, and 11th, and virtual screenings will follow afterwards from October 12th to the 25th. Please talk to Eric Nam, our Viet Film Fest Artistic Director, after this panel. He's over there, if you're interested in submitting. Lastly, our Viet Film Fest internship program is accepting applicants for 10 internship roles. Applications are due today for Eric's intern role, and other internship roles will be due at the end of the month on April 26th. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me afterwards. It is with great pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's panel. Jes Vu is the head of communications at CAPE and returns to CAPE having been their programs associate of the CAPE New Writers Fellowship in 2016. A proud parent of Vietnamese refugees, Jes grew up in the suburbs outside.
Proud child.
Proud child of Vietnamese refugees, sorry.
I'm not a parent.
Nice. My bad. She grew up in the suburbs outside of Philadelphia, Go Birds, before completing her education in Washington, D.C. at the American University School of Communications, receiving her BA in Film and Media Arts. She eventually migrated west to LA and has worked in the entertainment industry for over a decade. Prior to CAPE, she served as one of the story and cultural consultants on the Southeast Asian Story Trust for Disney Animation's Academy Award nominated film, Raya and the Last Dragon, and as project manager of Rise, a pop history of Asian America from the 90s, from authors Jeff Yang, Phil Wang, and Phil Yu. She's also a producer on Corey Deshawn's directorial horror thriller art house feature, Daughter, and co-producer of Sing J. Lee's Sundance award-winning feature film, The Accidental Getaway Driver, starring Dustin Wang and Hip Jung Ye. Highly passionate about supporting her Vietnamese communities, she formerly served as board member of VAALA. Returning to her roots, she currently serves on board for the Philadelphia Asian American Film Foundation. Please join me in welcoming Jes Vu.
Hello. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I wasn't expecting my full bio to be read. Anyway, thank you for coming. I know it's been a long day for Viet Book Fest. Who has been here since the morning, the very top? Oh, okay. Well, thank you for sticking it out all the way to the end. I'm really excited to do this conversation with not only these wonderful and talented audiobook narrators, but also friends of mine as well. We all know each other, so it should be a good time. I have a question before we get into introductions. I want to ask the audience, like, who listens to audiobooks here? Oh, okay, great, quite a bit. All right, great. So we'll kick it off and start with like quick introductions. We'll go down the line in this initial, and then maybe just say a couple books that you've narrated recently, or books that you've like just loved narrating.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Quyen Ngo. I am an actor, a trainer, and facilitator, and obviously an audiobook narrator. I co-founded an organization called Vietnam, which focuses on creating space for difficult dialogues, and that's across generations, but also demographics in the global Vietnamese community. I had a past where I worked in radio and municipal government and a few other things, but we can talk about that another time. In terms of books that I have narrated, one title that a lot of people have found my work through was The Mountains Sing by VyVy Nguyen. I also did her follow-up novel, which was Dust Child. And I have narrated Things We Lost to the Water by Eric Nguyen. There was an anthology of short stories by Vietnamese authors, both from Vietnam as well as in the diaspora, called The Colors of April, stories, basically fiction 50 years after the Vietnam War. I think there are several translators of the stories in that anthology that spoke this morning. So that's called Colors of April. And most recently, I narrated Discipline by Larissa Pham, which was just incredible. Thank you.
Hi, I am Elyse Dinh. I am an actress, dialect and acting coach, and an audiobook narrator, which is why I'm here. I'm kind of new to audiobook narrating. I've only been doing this for about 5 years. My favorites, one of my favorites, there's so many, but if I had to pick a couple, I think it would be one called Role Playing by Kathy Yardley, because she was so much like me. I was offered this job and I looked up, like, what is this book about? What is this character? And it said she is grumpy and she's a hermit. She hates to cook, she hates grocery shopping. She basically just stays dressed in lounge pants. And I wrote the author and I said, were you spying on me? What's going on? Like, this is my life. No acting is necessary, so maybe that's why they offered it straight to me without audition. So I love that because she was just very, very fun to do. And the most recent one I did was VyVy Nguyen's Cleo Dang Would Rather Be Dead. It's coming out on Tuesday, the 14th. It is so good because she speaks about grief just a little bit. She talks about this, so I'm not spilling any personal stories. She had a baby and the baby only lived for 4 days. And she didn't know what to do with that grief and how to push past it, so she decided to write a book about it. But the thing that is unexpected is that, yes, it is gut-wrenching, and I cried throughout narrating it, but it was also very, very funny. It's like dark humor, gallows humor. And I didn't expect it to be so funny, and in the end, it's also life-affirming. And it's special, so check that out. VyVy Nguyen, Cleo Dang Would Rather Be Dead, coming on Tuesday.
Hi, my name is VyVy Nguyen. I am an actress and an audiobook narrator. I didn't know we were gonna do our own intro, so I can't even remember the books I've done at this point. I've done The Fortunes of Jaded Women by Carolyn Wynn. Yeah, that book was my Everest. There was like 14 different Vietnamese women in it, and then they all get together in the conflict and the climax and just yell at each other. And I was like, how do I make them all sound different? This is a challenge. But she's very talented. I love her writing, so it was a lot of fun. But I do a lot of like the YA kind of love story type stuff. So like About Me for Two. What else have I done? A love story.
Like all the OC books.
Yeah. I'm from Anaheim originally, so I think when they were looking for an OC-based narrator who can represent, I get the call.
Not Here to Be Liked, another OC.
Oh yeah, there you go. Not Here to Be Liked. That was fun. I like that. And we went to high school together, she and I, Michelle Block. Yeah, it was crazy. She actually didn't even know that I was in the audiobook world. She was just looking for an Asian narrator, and I happened to be on the list, and she was like, wait a second, is this the girl I went to high school with? Let's do it.
And her second book is out on sale, so if you need more books.
I didn't narrate.
I hope she was nice to you when you were in high school.
She was very nice.
Okay.
I mean, we went to Offshore Academy in Cyprus, and we were very, very nerdy. And yeah, I went to audiobooks, and she went into writing. It's perfect.
So as you can hear, like all these actors, they have all this experience on stage and screen, and also voiceover and animation as well. But you know, audiobook narration, not a lot of people know what it is or how to get into it. So like for you guys, like how did you become an audiobook narrator? Like how does one go into this field? Because I know it's like different for all, and it's very in its own bubble. So and then feel free to like bounce off each other, ask questions. It's a conversation, right?
I'm really excited because I don't know how y'all got into it.
I don't know how you started either.
Go.
Tell me. No, it's just different for everybody, right? I'm sure it is. I mean, I could start. It was really hard for me. I really wanted to do this. It was with intention. Some people are like, oh, I just fell into it. I'm like, not for me. I was not so lucky to just fall into it. So I decided many years ago this was something I wanted to do because I've always read books aloud. I've been that nerdy kid, speaking of nerdiness. Ever since I was a kid, I would read stuff out loud because I enjoyed interaction or whatever. And I remember as a kid, there was this insult going around in class that, oh, he can't read without moving his lips. And it was supposed to be an insult as if the person has to sound out everybody, like maybe they're slow or dim-witted. And I remember thinking, what is wrong with that? I do that, you know? So I was like, there's nothing wrong with that. So when I found out, I don't know, maybe in the early 2010s that this was a burgeoning thing, I was like, I want that. But the people around me, my friends who were doing it, I would ask them, I would take them to lunch, how did you get started? I was very focused on this. And they would all say the same thing. They knew somebody who was a producer. And while it was on its way up, it was burgeoning, like I said, they didn't really have a system. They did just recruit their friends. Hey, you want to do it? You're an actor, right? You can probably do voices and you want to do this, you know? So the people I knew who were working in it were just recruited by people they knew. I'm like, that's not going to help me because I didn't know any producers. So finally, one friend gave me a nugget of information. She said, a lot of the books that I narrate are produced by this one studio. It's called Deyan Studios. I'm sure you guys all know this. It's spelled D-E-Y-A-N, in case you're taking notes. Deyan Institute. She goes, a lot of the, they produce a lot of audiobooks. And she said they also teach classes. So if you want to take a class there, maybe you get on their radar, and when they're casting, when they produce books, you know, they might hire you. So I said, great idea. So I signed up for a intensive, and it was 3 days, just literally from 10 to 6, where it was just a crash course. There was so much information, and at the end of which you also got a sample of professionally produced sample of a read. So I did that, and they added me to their database of actors and the different languages I speak. It's kind of like Actors Access. If you're an actor, you know, you kind of get a database. But even then, it took me 3 more years before they called me, before they said they had something for me, and then I had to audition, and that was my very first audition, and I booked it. That was the one with VyVy! I don't get to play VyVy's mom. And from
what was that?
It was Lan Gao's Family in 6 Tones, which is a memoir co-authored by Lan Gao and her
Harlan Margaret.
Yeah, Van Gao.
So they kind of did parallel stories within one book where it's Lan Gao's story in Vietnam and then coming here, and then her daughter growing up here as a Vietnamese American girl. And so we narrated, and it was during the pandemic, which was also crazy. Yes. So we didn't really get to speak very much or interact.
Yeah.
But
it was fun. I was so excited. It was my first one. It was co-narrator. So it eased me into it because doing a whole book by yourself is also really hard and a lot of time in the studio. So it was perfect for me for that to be my first book, getting to co-narrate with somebody who's a friend and who I respect and is so talented. And from there, I think it is kind of still who you know, because I guess I got on some kind of a list, the producer that do keep track, and because I've gotten straight offers from that book. I still have to audition, so that's kind of, you just need to get started somehow, however, do a good job, and then you get put on lists. Now, even when I get straight offers, I always like to ask, like, how did you find me? They'd be like, oh, we were talking to so-and-so and so-and-so, and some producer got your name from this producer that I had worked with before. So it's still who you know, but yeah, so just get in, however, and do a good job, I guess. Don't make them hate you.
The too long didn't read version, essentially.
I'm sorry, what?
Too long didn't read, TLDR.
TLDR. But my journey was also related to Dion as well. But I studied acting as my undergraduate degree at USC, and they had Audible actually come my senior year, and there was a representative talking about how audiobooks were a growing industry, and it would be a good way to kind of supplement your acting income with it, especially because actors are good storytellers for the most part. So they had a whole workshop with us, and I was really interested after that. So it was definitely on my radar, but it was interesting because Joe Ho, who was a friend, he knew someone at Dion who they were casting an anthology book. It was just a series of short stories, but they were all Vietnamese stories, and they didn't know any Vietnamese narrators at the time. This was like 2012. So he just emailed me being like, would you maybe want to participate in this? And I was like, yes, I've been really interested in entering audiobooks, but I just didn't know how to do it for a long time. So that got me in the door, and that got me on the Dion database. Yes. But the next book I did wasn't for another 4 years, but they kept me on the list. And so the next time there was a Vietnamese author, then I got recruited from that. But then since then, there has been such an explosion in terms of representation in the literary world since, and it's been really nice because, I had like 3-4 years between books at the time, and now it's just like consistent, and there's just so many stories to tell, which has been really exciting.
Amazing. And you know how we keep on referencing people we know? Joe was my husband in, he wasn't my husband. He was my love interest in a live action film that we dubbed in Vietnamese. So it's a Vietnamese film. It's called Micah, directed by Ham Jung.
Hey!
Oh yeah, and we have a producer in the house.
Oh, that's nice.
Excuse me, I thought he was my husband.
Oh no!
Girlfriend. You were his girlfriend after I died.
That's right.
Oh, excuse me, he was my husband.
That's true. I am.
You were the girlfriend after I died.
I was the girlfriend after Elyse's character died. So all of that to say, we end up being each other's moms, lovers, daughters, sisters, sons, by the work that we do. And just like Elyse was saying, I've had the opportunity to be on multiple titles now with both Elyse and VyVy. And one of my first titles was also with VyVy. It was Mangoes and Peppercorn. And so you just end up meeting people through the book and then not meeting them in person for many, many, many years. So the first time the three of us met, it was like, oh my God, hi, I've worked with you, but I don't know you. So the way that, go ahead.
I recognize your voice.
Yeah.
Like at a party, be like, I know that voice.
She did that earlier. I was in the bathroom and she heard me, and I'm also really loud. And so she ran in here. I knew you were in here.
I heard you, girl.
But the way that I got into audiobook work, it's funny because they both have called themselves nerds, but I'm not a nerd in the sense that I was like, in my family, sounds offensive to non-Vietnamese people, but Vietnamese people get it. Like, I was the dumb kid in the family, which again, when I talk about it with people out here, they're like, don't say that, that's not good. But it's true, like in the household, you have a smart kid and a dumb kid. I was the dumb kid. And so I would go to the library and I would just check out movies, not books. So I don't really be reading like that. But then what's amazing is that later in life, I worked in radio, and I love working in radio. And so I became really exposed to the sound of my voice, and I became familiar and comfortable with doing, in radio you call it breaks, which is when you hear the DJ speaking. And so I got used to that. So one day, an actor friend of mine in one of my studios said, I just finished an audiobook. And I was like, oh, I would love to do that because I like characters and things like that. But I'm not a prolific reader. And so I recorded a demo, posted it on Dion, and then boom. So if anybody wants to become an audiobook narrator, start with recording yourself and put it on Dion, Deyan. I often recommend that to lots of people just because it's a really good starting point. Yeah, and go ahead, Elyse, what you were
I was just gonna say, just to add to yours, also practice, when you put that sample on, go to the closet and read and see if you like it, because you have to like sitting in a booth or your closet for 5 hours and reading aloud. Some people think, oh, it sounds fun and it's a side job or whatever, right? Until they have to sit in a booth for 5 hours reading aloud and then they're like, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
So that's also a good way when you're recording a sample to see if you actually like that.
Absolutely. And then just a really quick, what ended up happening was I also posted no word, and then all of a sudden I got a DM from one of my favorite poets in the world. And she didn't have a profile picture, so I thought it was a scam. But she DM'd me and she goes, Quyen, nice to meet you. And it was Quyen Mai. She got fans in the house. So Quyen Mai DM'd me very sketchily, and she said hi, and I said, oh my God, Kate, I'm a huge fan of yours. And she said, did you check your email because I'm trying to get you to narrate my book? It was in my spam box.
Oh shit.
So from like 2 weeks before. So I went into my spam box and I was like, oh shoot. And then I responded, I said, yes, I would love to accept this job. But I had translated one of Quyen Mai's poems 5 years before that happened. So I will say, in my case, I didn't fall into my lap, but it was some weird cosmic serendipity that landed in my lap, and then Quyen Mai and I become homies ever since.
Well, she's put you in her contracts too. Like that's the thing.
Yeah. And then now she's a homie, so she got me. She puts me in her contracts to make sure that I narrate her audiobooks. So yeah, anyway, that's how I got started.
Yeah. Well, diving in, like what makes audio narration a craft? Because it seems easy, like on paper, but it's not. It's not, especially when you're in there for 4 to 5 hours and trying to get like a consistent pace and tone, you know? Who wants to volunteer first?
Okay, I'll just follow up that point real quick, and then you can follow up. Elyse, what she was saying, I think it was even that is euphemistic. I think audiobook narration is kind of torturous. Like it can be, so if you're interested, all good. If you love it, you will be able to do it. But imagine sitting in a box for 7 hours and just reading over and over and over while your engineer is just like downing coffee on the other side. It's crazy.
And that's if you're lucky enough to have an engineer, because so many of these publishing houses now are cutting their budgets and they don't want to hire a studio for you. They don't want to hire an engineer. So now they're just like, can you just self-produce at home and figure out and make your space super quiet, and then you edit yourself on the go, and that takes 3 times, 4 times as long.
Yeah. So when VyVy said that she had to do 14 voices, she is the actor of those 14 voices, the editor, the director, and does.
I did have a studio on that.
No, I was not doing that. But there are cases where you do many voices and you kind of own the entire process, which is very, very difficult. Again, it shouldn't deter you if you want to do it, because you will do it and you will be great. But all of that to say, I think that audiobook work has to be something that you love. That's what makes it a craft. Because if you truly believe in bringing characters to life and bringing stories to life, then that ends up being the craft. For me, it's that I feel possessed when I'm narrating audiobooks. I feel like a medium inside of these and telling the stories of these people. And so I think the craft surfaces and arises in different ways for different people. But at the end of the day, it is a craft, because if you don't love the instrument and the art of it, then I don't think that you can do it, because, like I said, it's very physically daunting. One person said to me that it's athleticism, and I think that's truly what it is. Audiobook work, you should look at it like a sport, because you have to have vocal athleticism in order to execute it.
And I have a question for the audience too. Like, does anyone listen to their audiobooks at like a faster speed, like 1.5, 1.25? Because I would love to delve into, like, because pace, you have to have a consistent pacing for it to be smooth, so people can, you know, quicken it up. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I don't do a consistent pace because it depends on the scene. If something is like danger and I start talking faster, like there's something behind me, you know, what is it? Is there a noise? No, it isn't. You know, and then if it's a scene where it's not like that, then of course I slow down. So I don't have a consistent pace throughout the book. I change it depending. And if you're excited, it was a scene, it was excited, of course I'm gonna talk, and oh my gosh, you know, like whatever. And then if I'm sleepy, I'm gonna be like, why is that happening? You know, so to me the pacing is more dependent on what's going on in the scene, situational for me.